Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hello. I think I can see my breath.
The voice of God.
So we kept it cold for you guys to hopefully keep you awake after that lunchtime coma. So my name is Tom Zazwada. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Loring Ward, BAM, and Buckingham. This is the third of three different marketing presentations we've done at this conference. So on Sunday, we heard from Ivan Abishan, who talked about the different advisor tools and resources that we have for advisors. Yesterday, we heard from Megan Beckemeyer. She heads our client strategy and marketing team at Buckingham. And she talked about the competitive landscape. And then today, we're going to hear from John Avila, who's going to talk about personas and how you can use those to focus your marketing. I thought I would give you a little bit of background on me before we get started. I've had a 25-year career in marketing and have been fortunate to work at two Fortune 500 companies, Apple and eBay. I also worked at two startups, and then I also worked at a family business. So I've helped a succession plan, helped my father-in-law retire, and actually at three of the companies I worked at, I worked with John Avila. So we've had some history together. I was fortunate enough to grab him from NVIDIA to join us at Loring Ward and BAM. And I'm excited to share with you what he has to present today. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to John. So
Thank you, Tom.
Here's Johnny.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, we thought of making it like Bikram marketing after lunch, but then, we thought that'd be a little too hot and warm. You guys would fall asleep. How are we doing today? You guys all right. You almost made it through this conference. We only have a few hours left, I think. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I think you guys are, I'll say the progressive marketers in the room, if you're in here wanting to learn about personas. And over the course of our presentation here, we're going to try to arm you with these kinds of three methodologies. We were in a marketing meeting yesterday, or a presentation with Megan. At the end, it was a perfect segue into this. How many of you were in Megan's session yesterday? Awesome. Do you remember one of the last questions? It was effectively, is there an app for that? When she was talking about, to look at a persona, look at, who you really market to. Well, the answer is there's not an app, but there is a methodology. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. So we're hoping when you come out of today understanding really what a persona is and how personas have been developed to become a sharp marketing tool. Think about what personas, use that to start to identify what persona you might go after as a target, and then some strategies for how to do that. I'll start with just a little bit of background about myself. As Tom said, actually very fortunate to work with this guy since the mid-90s. I know many of you know Vince Crivello as well. Tom and Vince and I were all at an agency in the mid-90s that really blew up international. I think I joined at number 79. I don't know, I was the 79th employee, but I think it was about 3,500 by the time our run was over. But it was a very internet-based digital marketing, really the first international digital marketing agency. Learned a lot there about the discipline of marketing, the discipline of applying digital technologies to what was then really kind of the wild frontier. This was really before even Google took off. It was long before Facebook. It was at a time when the digital scape was just exploding, and we got to work with companies like Norwegian Cruise Lines, General Motors, Tom ran. Disney was a key client of ours.
Well, to show you how old we are, we were doing the first websites for these Fortune 500 companies. They didn't have a web presence, so General Motors had no idea how to do this. We were in the right place at the right time with this agency, and we're building Fortune 500 company websites for the first time. So.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, probably our biggest client was Apple. We were doing a lot of work for Apple, which was a lot of fun. It was kind of before Steve Jobs came back, and then for a while after Steve Jobs was there. Before that, it's interesting. I hope it's interesting, at least indicative. My degree from college is actually in psychology and biology from UCLA. And then I did about 4.5 years of research at Stanford in a neurodevelopment lab. realizing I didn't want to be a doctor when I grew up. Certainly would safer for you all if I were not a doctor. Followed my kind of tendencies, my creative and collaborative passions to get into marketing. And over the course of that time, working with people like Tom, who is really probably the best marketing business partner anyone could ever have, which is probably why we've done it 3 times together. And I do mean that sincerely. Brought some of that scientific, that Bill was talking about today, that the scientific method. Now, I'm not going to say marketing is part science, absolutely, and part art. So it was kind of this great combination of the two sides of a brain. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But going through the discipline of really understanding what is the key problem. In marketing, we like to call it the condition that needs relief. And writing up a game plan to go after relieving that condition. That has very methodological and scientific kind of underpinnings. I could tell you for years we'd go into clients, and as we're unpacking the problems, I mean, it's just, you keep asking why, right? Why does that condition exist, and what caused that? And we'd leave some of these meetings and they were like, man, you ask a lot of questions. And when we'd come back with a plan based on that, they'd kind of understand why you peel that onion back to really find some core truths that underlie. So that has helped me kind of throughout my marketing career, both on high-tech, B2B, and B2C. Considered purchase is a lot. It's great methods to use in considered purchase. It's a lot different than buying a candy bar. So we'll unpack some of that today. These will all make sense, and Who's Who is not a typo, and I think you'll understand why in a second. So the challenge, and really what we want to try and do today is not shock. We're going to add a layer on, I hope, what you think a target market is or a persona is. It's kind of like, I'm like your marketing chiropractor. I'm going to try to relax you a little bit, and then I'll just snap. I don't know how many of you have been to chiropractors? Yeah, exactly. Your chiropractor is probably a monster. I mean, yeah, it's like Goliath chiropractic. Chiropractic's for large guys. Anyway, you can't, yeah, it's all about leverage. So I want to try and give you a little bit of I'll call it a whack on the side of the head to go a little bit deeper into what you consider a persona to be. And it's all in really thinking about growth. We've talked about that quite a bit this last couple of days, right? This is why we're all here. Grow your practice. There are obviously 2 key ways, right? The clients you have, grow the AUM. But the biggest challenge is how do you get organic growth? And how do you target your efforts? We are typically, as advisors, marketing is a very difficult thing. So if we try to sharpen our tools a little bit, that's what we're gonna try and help you with today. So let's talk a little bit. We know how hard they are to find, right? And then once you kind of get them in, it's like fishing. You don't want to pull too hard on the line, and even when you send messages out there, you may not even be quite sure what messages are hitting, what messages aren't. You guys are advisors, you're not marketers, and you have, as entrepreneurs, part of your responsibility, certainly. And I've done a survey, and you guys do spend time doing marketing, but I'm sure your comfort zone is more in advisory, right? That's where your hearts are. That's why you're advisors. So what we're going to try and do through not rip and replace, but better targeting, try to make good clients, easier to find. We know, if you run the regular, call it the regular stuff. I've tried Facebook, or I'm referral plans. That stuff is definitely effective, but it's also kind of not scalable and inefficient. So it's not about not doing those, but how do we add on to those with a little bit of methodology, a little bit of targeting to make those even more effective, right? What if, just by tweaking and doing some hard investigation into who you really resonate with as a target audience, we can increase the efficacy of that marketing. And what would that do to your odds of success, right? So there's a lot of noise out there. I want you guys to stop for a second and imagine 5,000 things. It's actually quite a lot. The big screen that we have in that large room, every pixel is about, I don't know, your fingernail width, and there are not even 5,000 across the whole screen in our large house. So 5,000 is a massive amount, but that's the number of messages you're hit with every day as a consumer. So if marketing is not a key effort, and Megan touched on it yesterday too, even when you are out there, it's tough to rise above the clutter, right? And people are scanning, they're looking at their feeds, they're texting, their stress is deprioritizing them. Busy life is deprioritizing decisions that need to be made. So you have a lot to really fight against, right? So, and considered purchases are even harder, right? Because considered purchases, as I said, have all of these dynamics against them, or there is a track that someone's going to have to go through to even get to your front door. So if we start asking, put a few of our assumptions aside, start challenging those assumptions, understand the barriers a lot better, understand the dynamics and the trends that we might be in today, because I guarantee you marketing 2 years ago was different than it is today. Marketing 2 years from now is going to be different. The pace that the industry is moving to try and grab our attentions for any service is just phenomenal. So one of the key words you're going to want to think about as we go through this is start to visualize, all right, if I am in my client's shoes, and we'll talk through this in the course of today, try to consider what is that process like. And we're building it off of some development out of the software industry that we'll talk about. And I want you to remember too, one of the dynamics that's going on obviously right now, everybody can do their own searching, they can talk to friends. By the time they actually contact you, industry analysts say people have already 60% through the decision cycle by the time they get to you. So what does that mean, right? And I know if I tell you that, maybe that even raises a little bit of anxiety, but it should relieve a little bit of anxiety if your targeting is better. Because now you've got people more than halfway in to wanting to work with you because your targeting is better, and we can count on that. Next set of process that we're going to set up today. So, while everybody's out there, we've got a challenge with how to grow our businesses. Everybody's got the same challenge on how to go after clients. We know a couple constants happen. And that is essentially, if you are looking for help, you have a motivating purchase for this, or a motivating reason for this behavior. We're going to call it purchase today, and I'm going to, just for terms, because I think it's a little trigger, and Tom and I have talked about this in terms of just the psychology of how maybe you guys can approach marketing. We know we talk about clients, and definitely clients, but when we're thinking about marketing, remember they are buying, and they're constantly buying from you. So I know we're talking about clients, I'm going to talk about people who are buying your services, and they are purchasers. So there's going to be a motivating reason behind it, and if you provide an answer to that motivating reason and put yourself out there and they can find you, then we know these two constants. They will gravitate towards you, right? You just have to be present, you have to be relevant, and then we're going to talk about how to target a little bit more. Any questions about sort of the idea of them as buyers for today? Because I just want you to kind of suspend disbelief a little bit. None? How do we feel about dessert? Are we awake? Do I need to tell them to make it colder? Okay. Are we icicles or all right. Okay, well, they're frozen. Uh-oh. All right. Ivan, tell me if we have to do calisthenics at some point, or Mike, or yes, sir.
Well, you asked whether there's any feedback at all about what you said so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't sell, but that's our professional background. So do we have a problem with you saying, for this purpose, let's call it sales and purchases? Yeah, I would say at this point I've got a problem.
Okay. So don't think of it as a permanent shift. It's just going to be thinking of it as a sense of, from the client's standpoint, I know you don't want to sell. And that is an absolute understanding. But from the customer's standpoint, our client's standpoint today, to understand really the personas you're going to trigger and you're going to meet with on a deeper persona level, they are in a purchase mindset. I know we don't want to sell, and we certainly don't want to push products. From day one indoctrination in the San Jose office, my first conversation with Alex was, product's a bad word, and I totally embraced that. But I think as a trigger to get out of our minds, in a sense, and try to get yourself into more of the purchasing process, the buyer process, they're thinking of buying. They're thinking they are paying money in some way or another, some form or another. They are paying money for a service that is going to give them value back. So that's the only dynamic I'm trying to kind of give you a little switch on your head today to just walk through so we can think about what that means when we all go out to buy something, whether it's a new doctor, right? What kind of service am I going to get? What kind of, whether it's a doctor or another accountant or a muffler shop or Starbucks even. Chiropractic, exactly. So just hang with me for another 45 minutes and then we can come back to, and part of the exercise too is to get you out of your heads and into the heads of your customers. But I think we have a cool little trick. We've already heard this. Megan had an even better slide yesterday, and Alex had a better slide than all of us. Here's the point. There is so much money in transition out there, right? Do we all agree with that after the last couple of presentations, the last couple of days? And like Alex, I think even held up fits is we represent this much as a collective of the market available out there. I think that's an empowering thing because that means if there's that much in transition, what happens if we, again, I'm talking about adding on as call it an experiment to begin with, but I know you guys will love this, but add on to your marketing tactics. What if I really refine my market? You might think you have a refined market, and I'm certain probably very few, if any, in the whole group feel that they do a broad marketing approach, right? Is anybody here just like at that stage? Maybe if you're starting up a practice, you're going to do, look, I'll take anybody with a pulse and 200 grand. But by the time your practice gets a little bit of momentum, you start to get a little more selective, right? And take advantage of that momentum. So what if we get even more selective to get more successful, right? We saw a slide yesterday. Megan, remind me, was this in yours where if you select a very narrow target to begin with, the growth rate was higher, right? We had
The growth rate is lower
at first, in the first 1 or 2 years, but 2 to 3, 5 to 7, you grow faster than the generalist, right? So you guys are ahead of the curve on that. So what happens now if we apply that specificity to your audience? And yeah, there's definitely a lot of money out there. I think you guys have seen the same reports from the high net worth survey. I'll back up just 1 second because it kind of cracks me up. Not cracks me up, but 1.8 million households in the U.S. have 3 million or more investable assets. Almost, you guys, I'll just round down, 1.8. And it's not even like you have to target the high net worth. I'm not even saying to target, but if that represents 1.8 million, and we go through a process and you start to, over the next couple of months, really refine who is your target audience, then I think you'll find greener fields out there. And it'll also allow us to, again, in that scattered world of 5,000 messages a day, being louder doesn't necessarily, actually it doesn't work. I'll tell you, unless you've got Tons and tons and tons of money. Being louder means spending millions of dollars during the NCAA finals. Being louder means showing up on the key societal, like the Super Bowl or the Oscars or something like that. We're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is be more relevant. All right, so go through this process again, getting into the heads of our potential ideal clients, understanding what conditions they need relief are, and their path to relieving that boosts our relevancy. And that's what comes to what I mean by who's who. Who's who do we use? You got TD Ameritrade, you got Schwab, we got all the industry reports that talk about boomers, Xers, millennials. Everybody talks about them in demographic, slight psychographic. But if we're all using the same data and the same marketing cadres, then we're kind of all going after the same target audience, right? What if we dive in to really find, in an audience segmentation standpoint, who do you love, right? So the who's is your who. I mean, think for a second. We've talked about ABC clients. How many of you guys, I know it's not a total practice, everybody does it, but we definitely kind of group our clients, right? Is that fair to say, yes or no? Nobody wants to raise their hand because, I gotcha. All right. When you think for a moment about your best clients, and I won't even say favorite, but best, start thinking about who are those people? And why do you connect with them? And the best relationships, as we talked about, I think, the high empathy, if you approach a relationship with authenticity, whether it's a business relationship, a marriage relationship, or whatever, there's a deeper, tighter bond there, right? Would we all agree on that? That we tend to find our tribes in life. And what if your best clients just happen to be, that kind of alignment in our tribe? So how do we help you guys be more singular? Just try to remember this. This slide really is hopefully one of the little mnemonics that you can walk out of here today, even if the rest of it kind of is somewhere between the cheesecake being cold and the next cup of coffee. I want you to walk out of here thinking about how can you be more singular, and how can you single out your target audiences and it'll take a little courage, it'll take a little experimentation, but you've got support from your marketing community to help you refine and do that. But what if we do that? We always hear this, right? I'm not the first, nor will I be the last one to put the slide up about, you really know your clients, right? The most successful advisors are the experts. So let me ask you a couple of questions, and this is not only when we say experts, what are the kinds of things you think about? I'm an expert on my client because I know X or Y about them. Give me a couple. Anybody?
You know what they really care about.
You know what they care about. Anybody else? You know their family? Is that what you mean by family? Yeah. You're the expert because you know about the family. Yes?
It's kind of related, but their cares, their concerns, their problems that they're dealing with generally.
Yeah. So they're where they are in life, kind of a thing. Anybody else? Say that. What they like to do for fun, the experts. What did you say again? Hopes and dreams. This is a good broad spectrum. One or two more? Exactly. All right, so let's foreshadow all of that goal to have that kind of an intimate understanding of the clients by thinking about what is that, what are those conditions before they even get to you, right? And start to build that kind of expertise. And just to oversimplify it, and it's probably overstating it, but once somebody comes in your door and you have a period of time, a year with them, 2 years, whatever, that's when you become an expert. right? That's fair to say. What if we take what we know about our best clients in those 2 years and apply it to the people who aren't in the door yet? And have a little bit of, put some stakes in the ground about where they are in their life, the clients that you want. What their families might be like, the clients that you want. What their concerns might be like, the clients you want, based on what you know about your favorite clients, right? Start thinking about that kind of expertise. And you start to understand their motivations, not only for coming in your door the first time, but for continuing to come in again and again and again in your door. Because as we also know, people's motivations change over time, right? So, I want you to think about why they are your who, and why those favorite clients that you know all of those things about might be yours. I have a theory I want to challenge in this talk, and that is, I think your best clients might be your best clients because your motivations for being an advisor, maybe even also being an investor, are very close to their motivations to wanting help and being an investor. And where you have that overlap is where you find your best clients. So you guys tell me, how is that real? Is it not? Does it feel genuine? Does it feel like that's an authentic premise? Or are there challenges to that? Because I can make this better with challenges.
I think if you had an interest, and I guess that's a motivation, but areas of interest in common, helpful, be connected that way. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts about that overlap of, we all seek kind of our own tribes, right? And in the advisors that I've interviewed about their favorite clients or their best clients, I've sensed and seen there is this deep overlap. We think very similarly about life, or we think very similarly about, and I mean, certainly when you get an alignment on the investment ideology, right, as tight as we are with that, that makes your job easier. That makes them as clients easier. When you have crossover and can understand someone's dream pretty easily, right, and understand that motivation, I would say that probably rests in your motivations as well, just a little bit. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to kind of connect with them. What if somebody come in, like Kinder said today, well, my dream is to, sell everything and live in a yurt in the middle of Arizona. Is that really kind of something you might let them do or try to, that would be because he doesn't see that, or an advisor wouldn't see that as a good thing, but maybe it is a good, maybe that's a bad example. That was just off the cuff. Tom, you're supposed to stop me from doing those bad examples. So the challenge I want to give you guys, here's that little bit of that I hopefully have relaxed you a little bit and am realigning your neck and your back, is if we choose to win our unfair share of new clients, choose that client where we've got this Venn diagram overlap, and spend some time figuring out what rests in that overlap. What is that consanity between your personality, your motivations, and their personality and their motivations? And I think if we do that, we can get to start thinking about more relevant buyer personas, which we'll go through. So buyer personas have been around for a little while, but I wanted to give you a quick history of where they came from. And it actually, now demographics have been around a long time in marketing. I want to say the late 80s, in software development, gentlemen really kind of invented the whole idea of a user journey in software. The reason that Mr. Cooper did that, Alan, was because he was a software engineer working on the interface of a program that was all designed by engineers. And users had no idea how to use this thing because they don't think like engineers. And the sort of whack on the side of his head was, well, what if we start to think about what a user wants from this program, what a user can do with this program, and then start to design it that way. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was in school at UCLA, one of my professors was like the father of human factors design. Super interesting guy. I could talk about him for an hour. But one story I remember about him, the difference between engineers and their design and thoughtful psychological design, was he was doing a consulting job for Boeing. You know the little cards in the back of the seats that tell you how to get out of the plane in an emergency? Can you guys picture those in your head? You saw one yesterday. What's the balance of words versus images on it? Anybody? It's images only, really. So Dr. Lyman, a long time ago, figured that out. They had a bunch of the engineers who had written up their card in the simulator at Boeing. All right, guys, it's time to get out of the plane. And they essentially inflated the inflated the ramp inside the plane. And so they called Lyman in and said, we got to change how this is done. And he figured out doing just really quick, you got to do it in seconds, do quick pictograms. And actually, he also said, if you look, they're over the right shoulder, or they should be, because most people are right-handed. When they developed the pictures over the left shoulder, people didn't work as fast to pull the triggers under stress. Anyway, user design is very important. So we realized when we added the idea of demographics, and then as this user journey, we'll call it user journey, buyer journeys, got combined the subsequent years from Dr. Cooper's work, that's when we came up with the idea of really a refined buyer persona. So apply that path of decision making, a path of interfacing to your sales process or your customer's process to find you, I should say. We're not going to call it a sales process. So again, just a little background, but not much. So we've done this for Tom and I over the course of 20 years, applied this kind of process and discipline for companies that hopefully will give you some comfort that you guys can do it. If we can do it for GM and Apple, you guys can do it. And it is this combination of art and science, right? Which is another kind of thing I liked about Bill Nye's talk today, where he took sort of his science background, applied his creativity, and has really created a career out of educating, as he said, fourth graders. That's an awesome combination of art and science. And this is the kind of approach we take to doing this. So what is really, on a high level, what's the difference between a segment and a persona? Anybody want to give me just an idea of a segment? Baby boomers, yeah. So a market segment is really kind of, it's that demographic thing, right? It could be just Boeing employees or Microsoft employees on a broad scope. Or it could be high net worth individuals. We're taking large swaths of demographically based information. There is a little bit of behavioral based stuff like faith-based investing or environmental. But that's still, I think, more of a large swath market segment than it is a persona. I mean, you can build personas out from underneath them. But these are examples of personas. Anybody want to take a guess, a wild guess at what a sandwich might be?
Kids and parents.
What do you mean by kids and parents?
Between the kids and parents.
Yeah. In between G1 and G3, and money going out both ways, right? And you can unpack underneath that a lot of behavioral concerns, right, and behavioral needs. What about a sieve? I guarantee you haven't seen that one before. We came up with that one. Oh, come on. Don't you feel like it when the kids go off to college? What was that? Yeah, it goes out as fast as it comes in, right? And they feel like they want help, but they don't know how to stop the bleeding. Yeah. All right, I think still feeling it's a you guys might find this as an interesting combo of demographic adding in psychographic. What do you think the still feeling it is? Old people. Oh, it's divorced? No.
Late career, but still active.
Adults who are done paying college.
Oh, okay. I'm learning a lot about you guys actually here. This is what's great.
And they're listed on the student loan.
Yeah. Yeah, Ernest has got it nailed it on the head. Built this one off of the idea or the data that 44% of Xers experienced retirement fund loss in the last downturn, and 68% of those are still feeling it. So, well, that's a demographic. But now you layer on this a Gen Xer, yeah. Sorry. The Gen Xer. I know you sound like that. You should be a Gen Xer, aren't you? You're not a boomer. Anyway. All right. So the point here is we can start to apply some layers of personality and motivation, just even with titling sometimes, but obviously that would be a bubble up of some of the data that we're seeing underneath it. Rollovers, we also know that, at least in white-collar knowledge workers, average tenure's going down, right? So you're in long enough, you start putting in a 401k over here, you move to the next job, where are the rollovers happening and how often are they happening? And there are planners out there. I know I was encouraged by a data point that said in the 2018 report that about 33% of millennials, we kind of think they don't have money, but millennials have money. 33% are planners, and they like to plan what happens with their money. So that may not be, that may be a target you don't want to overlook. Let me give you two examples of a little bit of a deeper dive into the kind of personas you can generate that might surprise. And again, not saying you go after these demographics or these personas, but as you start to unpack what's in that the crossover on the Venn diagram of who your favorite clients are, you might start to see some dimensions that you really can identify with and use in your marketing to create that higher relevancy. Aren't they darling? Are they a typical family?
That's the photo that you buy to get the frame.
So I was when I was at GoPro, we had a huge challenge that we started about how do we sell more cameras to families, because we believe that there were lots of reasons to have a little GoPro camera, and believe me, I can talk another hour. So we actually did a 6-month in-depth research with a research company on what is a family in the United States today. And this is only 9 of 12 that we found. These were the 9 biggest ones. And the message was, and again, underneath each one of these are just the billboards, but underneath each one are motivational behaviors, obstacles to consideration, not only in buying cameras, but just obstacles in life. And when you start to understand that there really is all these shades out there, that gives you an opportunity to do what? To pick and to really understand and go after a specific market. X-Files. X-Files are Generation X parents who project their youth onto their kids. You can pick an X-File. I hope now at some point, next time you're in a mall, you're going to see an Xer, and they're going to have a teenage kid with a Who band shirt on there, or the Rolling Stones wearing shirt. That's a good example of that. They are trying to identify with the children by sort of saying, hey, I was a child too, and this is what was cool and I was into, and they kind of project onto your kid. Rookie Force is an example of stay-at-home dads. In this day and age, thankfully, and I'm hoping it only gets better, there are a lot of families out there where the wife is the primary earner. And the dads get to make this conscious choice to stay home and raise the kids. We call them the rookie force because they don't know what the hell they are doing. And there is not a lot of info out there, but they're creating it and they're sharing it through YouTube and videos and podcasts and things like that, right? Third culture families. You got mixed race couples having kids, and what are the dynamics? I mean, we even see it in the royal family, like in the last year, right, with Meghan Markle, and the whole kind of where does she land in the spectrum, right? And she's even talked about how that has created anxiety and stuff. So there are issues and psychology associated with all these things. Indie living, people just not getting married, staying independent their whole lives. That's they have a different kind of a family. It ends up being what I like to call a wolf pack. It's that circle of friends. SOGLOMOS is I know I didn't do that acronym, but it is about people who basically travel the world and they build a family when they travel. And have any of you traveled internationally? When you're younger too, even just like going on those. And when you're out, I have a nephew who just came back from traveling in Asia for 6 months. He was a cancer survivor, and that was his dream when he got better. He has relationships with people he met on the road that they'll be friends and family members for the rest of their lives. Co-living, single ladies, I asked Megan what she thought a pank was. You have any idea what a pank is?
No.
Well, we know what dinks are, right? We know what dinks are easy. Pank is a professional aunt, no kids. I have 2 of them in my family. I mean, anybody else have anybody that's just like this, or is a pank? Do we have any panks in here? All right. Anyway, I think I've made the point. Professional aunt, no kids. They could be married. Oh, the punk. Yeah, professional unmarried, no kids. Yeah. Well, what? Yeah, double income. I don't think I put dink up there. No. Yeah. And then State of the Union is completely odd for a guy like me. There's couples who are together apart. I actually met one this last summer. The husband is a math professor at Notre Dame, and the wife is a dermatologist here at Washington University. They just got married, and for the next few years, they have 2 houses. Yeah, they're just living apart. So last quick examples. This is one that Tom and I did for a high-end retail client. When we think of shoppers that go to the mall, and we're not talking about the Valley Mall. Oh my God, it's just so busy. I guess they probably don't even talk like that anymore, do they? I'm trying to think of what my kids, according to Bill Nye, they do. Yeah. So these are like shopper types. So again, we think of I'm selling a shopping mall. Who are the people that go and shop? You can even dimensionalize that, right? Any taskmasters in here? I am definitely one. Katie, what's a taskmaster? Get in, get your shit, and get out. Exactly. Yeah. Hedonist just wants the latest thing. Scientists, we know it's. I bet you we have a bunch of scientists in here. I know this guy is. You're a taskmaster, but you're also a scientist. You research until it's like the next generation of the thing. And I mean that lovingly, but exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully we've made a point that when we start to really look, we can find dimension, we can find shades of color.
But actually, John, what I'll say about that list that was super important about when we were doing that campaign for that client was that informed every piece of marketing that we did. Whenever we were talking about marketing, we would identify which one of those 5 persona types are we actually targeting. Because once you get to know who the scientist is, what their motivations are, who the taskmaster is, what their motivations are, it's going to change what the messaging is. It's going to change the audience of where you're targeting things. So it was a really important step for us in solving how to actually target and go after those markets. So I think this is why this exercise is so important, because once you identify who those clients are that you want to go after, once you know exactly all their motivations, all their psychographics, et cetera, it helps you define where you're going to target them, where you're going to go after them, what the messaging is going to be, what the content's going to be, et cetera. So this is why I think this is an important subject for you guys to understand, because once you know that, now your marketing is going to take off.
No. No. Well, it depends. No, I'm just kidding. Well, technically, we just did it publicly, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, these most of the time, well, yeah, very most, if not exclusively all the time, you're not going to like, have your new client come in and say, well, hello, you're obviously a taskmaster. Yeah, exactly. So it is for your purposes, and thanks, Tom, for. You should chime in more often. This is going to be half the length if you don't talk. So let's talk about now your who. I mean, we kind of went who's who is it going to be? What's it your who? And I'm hoping even now, even with just those kind of triggers of the sieves and the sandwiches and the slogomos and maybe you guys are starting to think that maybe I've got some shades of clients based not on their AUM and their length of time with me, but based on maybe things that we're connected on, right? Hopefully you're starting to make some connections in there. So, again, I had to do this, but we already hopefully talked through this. We're real clear, just another 25 minutes or so. Think of them. It's from their standpoint, right? And they're in the process of determining who they're going to work with. So there's a lot of science around the buyer journeys and consideration cycles, especially for considered purchases and considered relationships that we're talking about. Again, think too of doctors, lawyers. You guys are all the typical kind of center of influence, right? These are similar kinds of buying cycles that go in here. So we can group it into sort of 5 rings that if we have some idea, use this as a structure to break down what happens. Or what might be the thought process from your client's standpoint. Again, the hardest thing is to detract your motivations. Actually, if you use your motivations as a buyer, that's easy. And then if you do that and that overlap, you might find better clients, right? So let's talk about the need, research, evaluate, decide, and then post-evaluate. So this takes us through those. There is rational and there's emotional parts of the buyer journey, right? And what impacts them each side. The rational stuff, and you guys could probably expand this list. Does anybody want to throw something else on there besides profit, security, utility, caution, health? What are sort of those rational drivers that clients need to serve when they come in through your door? Anybody want to throw 1 or 2 more up there? Say that again? Time? Opportunity. All right. We'll layer those in with emotional. And again, I think if you know a client really well, you could expand this list significantly, right? But just examples, as examples of the emotional kinds of considerations that come into your purchase cycle or your buyer journey. So let's look at key influences before they even get into your door. They are thinking about brand consideration. We had a great review of that from Megan yesterday. Good survey of websites. We're doing a lot of work from the marketing side for you to help you present that brand in a much more cohesive, help you refine your messaging. Things like the Advisor Websites program that Ivan talked about on our first evening. Customer empowerment. Again, 60% of the decision has already been made by the time they get there to you. People are pulling research. They're doing comparison shopping. They are carrying all the data in the world in their pockets, and they're using it, especially on a considered purchase cycle. So knowing that, embracing that, understanding that they've already done a lot of that, and appreciating that before they even get into your front door, right? And, this idea of loyal versus advocate, right? So bringing them into the process through, and moving them into a space of, are they just loyal or they become advocates? I think it was Rob Ryan the other day in the Admired Advisor says, I don't like referrals as much as I like introductions, right? Nice, easy flip, right? What do you guys think the difference between, what does an introduction add? Yeah, they are involved, right? It is an active connection, right? I want Megan, I want you to meet Dale. And versus, hey, yeah, okay. Versus, hey, Megan, talk to Florence, right? There's the big difference there if I'm only talking to her versus connecting you guys. So we want more of those kinds of clients. So again, the challenge, I want you to just switch in your head and think a little bit about you are your best client. What if you are your best client? I mean that figuratively, and actually look at the people who are your best clients and find out what those elements of their persona are that line up with your perspectives and wants and needs. That's, I think, an easy place to start versus trying to strictly imagine. I think it'll be easier to imagine the more you kind of use that connection. And if you do that, and we go through thinking about their journey to you, one thing you can do is find a place. And this is, anybody know what this picture is? Oh, come on. Has it been that long already? Yeah, it's Mad Men. The reason I like this picture is once you start to collect motivations and understandings, you create a war room. And we call it a war room, concepting room. Oops, sorry. Create this space. It could be in your office. It can be in your garage. I know Tom's got one in his basement with lots of red strings that cross the map, and there's an F. Space right in the middle. Yeah, I didn't realize it was my face. Uh-oh. It's and all these other things, big arrows. You want to kind of spend some time and give yourself some space to think through, what that person is and what that persona is as you go through this collection and journey. And the things you're going to collect, I said there was kind of like these 5 levels, right? If you think through these 5 rings of buying insight, give yourself some notes on papers or mnemonic pictures, to remind you of a concept. That's what a mnemonic is. Tim should give me a quarter for that word. We'll have to remind him. You can start to get an idea of who that audience is. So let's think a little bit. Here's a practical thing. The most compelling reason your buyers decide to seek financial advice. It's not an easy answer. And if somebody immediately says something like, oh, I want security, right? Well, security for what? This is where guys like me and Tom, and hopefully you, get into that, how many questions of why can I ask? So you really understand what that underlying motivational driver is, right? Can anybody give me something that they think is maybe a second level down or a third level down on a motivating factor that their clients come back? Yeah. They don't have confidence in making it. What's your name? David. That's a good one. They don't have confidence in making it themselves, so they're not DIYers, right? So they have a fear of missing out on a financial future that they could have, maybe. That's a motivation. Why do you think they're delegators, though? I mean, why do they not want to have to deal with it? Could be scarcity of time. Anything else? Maybe they feel like their talent, they don't have the talent, so they might be seeking. And then if you keep digging into how come they're that aware, you can really start to understand more about them, right? So you don't just stop at the level of they're seeking advice, or they don't want to be a DIYer, or they know their own limitations. What kind of person is aware of their own limitations? What is it about them that they... And you can start to really unpack, I think, some extremely valuable insights that start to help you target, really understand that kind of... If a person knows more about themselves and is that aware, they've been motivated to do that and be that. Why? Are they humble? Are they proud? Are they... So just continue to let yourself unpack. Yeah. What if you end up and you feel like it's in a typical area and you continue to dig? Because if somebody says, oh, I want to give back to my community, why? Because when you're dead, or whatever. I don't think you're that done. Yeah. I think you guys, if you get into this and you start to investigate motivations this way, it's actually hard to feel like you're done. You could continue to kind of unpack And depending on your creativity and your personality, you will find some insights that start to reveal themselves down there. Well, you're only annoying yourself. This is a thought experiment at this point.
That happens a lot.
And if you are doing it with somebody, I'm sure you have a little more social skills to kind of allow a little bit to go in deeper. And it does. You don't want to do it in an annoying way. But you throw in a little bit of the kinder in the sense of getting people to talk, and they will start to reveal these underlying layers and behaviors. We have about 10, 15 left, so I'm going to keep going. And I only have about 45 slides left. No, I'm just kidding. I think we can start to turn up the heat, though, if you guys are cold enough, because we're getting near the end. Wait, let's see. Yes, second thing is success factors. So understand the motivational behaviors do kind of lead to, so what do you want? Even something like outlive my money, to me, is not a final answer. Why? Why do you want to outlive your money? Well, I'm afraid of being homeless and being on. I don't know, but continue. Yeah, my kids I have to because my kids won't take me in or whatever. Well, why? Why do you not have that relationship with your kids? Now you're into that high EQ stuff, right? So start to really unpack what do they want, and I think Kinder talks a little bit about that with these goals. Maybe some of that could influence. Again, this is a little bit of that psychosocial approach to understanding your target audience at a deep level. If you do this kind of even on your own first, it might make it a little bit easier. Number 3, and this might be one of the easiest, all right? There's a lot of reasons why people can't continue or people want to stop. It could be, right, what are the barriers in the way? And it could be just proximity, easy things. Oh, I'm 90 miles away from the service that I want. It could be emotional barriers. It could be psychological barriers, those kinds of things. But if we understand these, the who, what, why that might get in the way, you can preempt, or at least know how to deal with them preemptively. So you've got these, you start to map it out. This is kind of that learning from the computer science. Mapping how someone is going to weave their way to you. And it's not just a single line with dots along the way. Multiple points of entry, multiple points of exit. Start to understand, what happens to get them to that 60% lean in where they call you, and then how do you take them the rest of the 40% of the way into closing? Or how you decide even that you want to take them the rest of the way into the 40%. Be authentic. We talked about this, I think, a couple times in the last couple of days. The more, and it's hard to do that, right? I mean, that it means you're vulnerable. I'm going to be exactly who I am. I'm going to be exactly the advisor that I want to be. And if you are open to doing that with potential clients and they lean in and say yes, well, you have a phenomenal new client because you don't have to fake anything, right? And the kinds of things that come out of this kind of marriage or being this kind of authenticity as an advisor, I've heard stories of an advisor who sends, well, we talked about it yesterday, Mie, sends a postcard every time she travels to her oldest client who was a Holocaust survivor and had a great relationship. She would visit them, or what kinds of relationships do you all have outside that transcend even just the advisory practice, that are those, I know the families, and it's you're going to the football games because they're in your circle or you're in their circle, right? You're doing these natural behaviors that are authentic and genuine because they're authentic and genuine. You're being authentic and genuine, and it strengthens those relationships. So if we do that, we've worked through the who. Let me just give you a couple of things to think about in the next year. If you come up and can fill in a statement with, I understand and serve blank better than anyone else, and it's not a demographic, and it's not a psychographic, and it is a really specific kind of person, then I think you have a foundation to try to do some because if you can get to that, this is sort of like the culmination, right? If you can get to a statement about a person and you understand those motivational behaviors and the barriers underneath it, then I do believe you can start to do real persona-based targeted marketing to add into your mix and see what kinds of clients you can attract into the door and how fast you can close them. So if you add that who, go through the process, and we're available for talk you through it, consult, ask more questions. This is what your marketing department and the combined entity is for. If you do that, add them to the market, and commit to 12 months, because these things don't, they take time, right? Everybody knows marketing, getting clients takes time. So give it time. And it could be the kinds of things that you apply this target to, do something new, right? How many of you have something like a web, you all have websites, right? Anybody not have a website? You're not going to raise your hand, but no one's raising their hand. Everybody has a website? All right. You send out email blasts probably. You send out newsletters. Is there anything of a talent that you might have that you're not using? Do you like to talk and stand in front of people? Or do you like to talk and maybe you could do a 10-minute podcast or something? Or think about what you do uniquely that could be added to your marketing mix. And I call it spin cycling. You can look at the lean startup. The thing is basically the general premise is don't wait for something to be 100% perfect. Get it operational, deploy it, try it, see what happens, and then learn from that and just keep learning, revising, spin cycle it. And then the last thing is find something new. Maybe it's a single web page targeted to that audience. Maybe it is something like a podcast. Again, what is your natural creativity? Maybe it's, making bread. Create a specific kind of seminar that follows your passions and attract people that have that same passion. Another gentleman we heard on Sunday got a group of his clients together who were all muscle car enthusiasts. They didn't know each other. He knew that they were all because he knew his clients really well. And it's a new group of 10 friends that have this shared common thing. And you know what? The advisor gets a lot of social cred for bringing them together and facilitating their love for the thing. So what if you guys did this for the next year? Does it seem like something that's approachable? Have we tried to arm you maybe with a little bit of understanding, some methodology, and hope that you can craft some paths to try it? What is it? What kind of people who come from abundance would you want to deal with? Ones who have like a social giving heart, or ones who want to leave a legacy? I don't know. You can still kind of, I think, unpack. And if it feels like it's a broad target, it probably is. And you can even choose to, like, if paddleboard becomes, okay, now I'm way too specific, single moms who are active outdoors, who treasure moments in, being active with their kids and want to fund that kind of activity somehow, then you start to, again, right? You kind of mold these things to fit what that demographic you cross over with.
Yeah, and Dale, I would say, like, for you, I know you target Boeing employees. My guess is you don't target all Boeing employees. You probably can have a persona that's specific to the type of Boeing employees that work best with how you can help, right? So it might be those that are 50 plus, or, you start to kind of get into the specifics of the right Boeing employees that you want to go after, not just every Boeing employee, right?
So thank you all for your time. I know it's especially hard after a good lunch, and I appreciate you guys coming in and staying awake and manning the cold. I hope we've armed you with some ideas.